Tens of thousands of Ukrainians have died, men and women fighting to defend their country and civilians killed in their homes and on streets across the country. As you can imagine, it's also had a devastating effect on children, from the grief of losing parents to a disrupted education. Sarah Brown is a campaigner for global health and education and is the founder and president of the charity Theirworld, which has been working with children in Ukraine. She joins me now. Morning, Sarah.
Morning.
What is Theirworld doing in Ukraine?
So we've focused a lot as a charity on education in emergencies. We've mobilised, funding and resource and unlocking political will around the world. Specifically in Ukraine, we're focused on children who have a very disrupted education. And, in the middle of all these talks about how this war can come to an end 3 years on, these are children who need to grow up to be the people that rebuild their country. So you're going to need the engineers and the doctors and the teachers of the future. So keeping pace with education when they are learning in underground shelters, being shifted around, safe one moment, moving somewhere else, distressed and disrupted by what's going on in their country. But there is an appetite for learning and an education. So at Theirworld, we've made sure we've been able to send out laptops, learning materials, everything to put in the hands of the educators and the teachers. And so far, we've reached about 1.5 million children inside the country, sometimes when they're displaced outside as well. And this week, we're sending out another 500 out to the areas, which are this time very specifically for those older children who are now studying the equivalent of A-levels or higher. So they sit their national multi-subject test, as they call it, and they're able to do it digitally. So we're making sure they've got those in their learning centres.
Your colleagues have been there and you've been there yourself.
Yeah,
I know
absolutely.
You've met the Zelenskys. How did it strike you? I mean, how did the people strike you in terms of dealing with this reality?
Yeah, I visited other conflict zones in the past, and what I found remarkable about the Ukrainian people is that determination and resilience. If something's knocked down, they rebuild it. They're planning for the future all the time. I visited Kyiv, I met with the Zelenskys. They're talking about investing in education, investing in early years, making sure that the older lot are able to get their exams ready to be able to go to higher education. And, we invested last year in a museum of mathematics that's a new building in Kyiv that's there for 0 to 8-year-olds to be able to catch up on all those maths and STEM subjects that will be important. That's going to open next month. This is a resilience from people, from the leaders at the top to the children who want to learn, to keep bouncing back and keep going.
We talk a lot about, the tanks and the missiles and the this and that and the other. But in any war, a lot depends on, if you like, the morale and the resilience of the people. I suppose a simple way to ask this question is, how much more do you think the Ukrainians can take?
I think they'll keep going and keep, learning and building and investing in their country and doing what they can. I think it's what the rest of us all around can do and offer. For our part, we've been able to contribute in on education. I hope, the leaders are sitting around working out a peace over the longer term. But as Kofi Annan said, education is that building block of how peace is created. So I'm a great believer that this education investment is part of what keeps Ukrainian people going, but also is what puts in what happens next for them.
How do you think Mr. Zelensky is reacting to what I suppose might be politely described as cooling of relations with the White House?
Well, I don't know him well enough to know how he's reacting. I can only watch and see how he's responding. But he's shown himself to be quite a remarkable leader right from the beginning. He was a very surprising leader. No one expected him to be elected as president of his country, least of all his own wife, I think. And but there they are as a couple and very determined. And Elena Zelenska is a really extraordinary woman. We work very close with her foundation to partner with her to make sure that the laptops we're providing are going to the right place. They're not disappearing somewhere. They're going into the hands of the educators and the children who need them.
How much is our own government and indeed our own people helping you with what you're doing?
Well, Theirworld specifically doesn't take government funding. So actually all the work we've been doing has been partnering with businesses where we got the laptops from HP and some software from Microsoft, but also from people. I mean, these laptops going out this time have come from a fundraising walk that took place last year where people around the globe had gone off and done Theirworld Your Walk and took part in it. We've taken funds from People's Postcode Lottery, which again is individual people making small contributions. So that's what's funding this. But we work alongside some of the other big NGOs who are also out there, the UNICEFs, the War Childs, who are working with government funds, and the quality of their work is very dependent on those grants coming through.
And I assume if people want to help, they can go on your website and they'll find a way of donating or whatever it is.
It is all there. You can get all the information as well, yeah.
You're a pretty experienced political operative, if you don't mind me using those terms. Keir Starmer's off to Washington this week. What would you want him to prioritise when he gets in the room with the president?
I think it's about, as it always is, where two leaders get together, is for them to both listen to each other. I think if you're trying to build an agreement with each other, is to be able to listen as much as you're talking. And I think
this doesn't entirely feel like
important men in big rooms could do more of that. Yeah,
it doesn't exactly feel like a message that has been much said to Donald Trump.
Look, all of them as leaders, I just think you've got to listen to what the other side, you've got to walk in other people's shoes. And I think on both sides, they need to be thinking of the Ukrainian people who didn't ask for this war and who have been enduring it, with some fortitude.
They, of course, the Ukrainians didn't start this, so, as you say. You do a lot of work with Theirworld and with your other charities, with your own charity, across the globe. One of the things that I hear quite a lot, and you've probably heard this, especially in Africa, which is the complaint that Europe and America are in a big, major crisis over Ukraine. Yet there have been, maybe not as many, but many, many lives lost in Sudan and Congo, and nobody's talking about that. Is that fair?
The world I work in, people are talking about it, through charities working out how to galvanise resources. I think people are quite fearful that support they've been getting might be taken back. Every donor government is talking about cutting funds, I think without exception. I can't think of one that's increasing their funds. There's a constant debate and dialogue around the value of international development, whether it's soft power or whether it's seen as money that should be spent nationally. I don't think those conversations are going to go away. I think it's quite healthy to have them and always kind of robustly look at that. But it always has seemed to me that this was funding that effectively is investing in children and in their safety, and where we have crises in the world, we have to pay that attention. I think it is hard for Congo and for Sudan to keep getting themselves high up the headlines. And I think organisations like mine and other NGOs are quite good ways of keeping that message going. But it's a balance, isn't it, between what government does, what civil society does, what the corporate world can do. And unless we all come together with it, you can't ever get to the point where you've got enough funding going through to fund all children.
Sarah Brown, good luck with this work. It's terrific work. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you so much, Trevor.